Hey! Hey? Hey! I still don't have a bike. So it's been over 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Did you hear what I just fucking said?
Since this bike has been at the dealer. And this got me thinking. Remember when I said, do I still have confidence in this bike? I don't. I don't know if I'm gonna buy a new bike. I don't know if I'm gonna get rid of this bike. So that's almost a real possibility. Well, let's unpack that a little bit more. Now, if I am going to sell this motorcycle, there's a few questions that have to be answered. And one of those would be the cost or the price that someone would have to pay for this motorcycle. Now, looking at the year, the mileage, I mean, all the details, and especially the modifications and the money that I've dumped into it on this channel, that makes me think, what do you think my KTM 690 SMC R is worth? Factoring in mileage, issues, everything that I've done to this bike, the modifications. I know it's not going to be a one-for-one conversion, but we got to think too, like I've probably spent close to $12,000 to $13,000 on mods for this bike. So I think the one factor that I need to calculate is depreciation. But what is depreciation? Depreciation can be defined as a reduction in the value of an asset with the passage of time, due in particular to wear and tear, not to be confused with appreciation, which can be known as the rise in value of an asset. So, if we're looking at depreciation, basically what it is your stuff is not worth as much when you bought it because you used it. And it's not new anymore because it's not the same year. Now, this is a very broad example, and the first thing that I think of when depreciation gets brought up is the automotive industry. I mean, look at high-value luxury vehicles, i.e. Mercedes. Look at new prices of, I don't know, maybe one of their regular E-classes, S-classes, anything that you can find on the Mercedes website, and then find one that's like 3 years old, or even better, like 10 years old. And look where you go from like $150,000 MSRP off the lot to like something that's like $22,000. Like, holy depreciation. And they only got like 50,000 miles on them. Same thing like Audi and their e-tron, whatever the heck SUV, not SUV, sedan that they're running into, the depreciation on those. I saw like an Instagram reel where it was like the whole depreciation value of that Audi was like 52%. Literally brand new, they're like 170. They're selling them for like $60,000. Like, what? So to calculate that, or at least to understand it a little bit more, I've got to think of my own examples, right? So I had that Audi, that was an S4 Avant with a 6-speed manual. I paid $10,000 for it. I ended up trading it for, well, my van. And did I lose money on that deal? Probably. But at the same time, I'm more of an emotional purchaser. I don't purchase based on like a value or what I can get out of a vehicle in the next following years. I buy things because I like them, and because I'm going to use them, and because it's not that I don't care about what I'm going to get for it in the end, but I'm going to use it and hopefully never have to get rid of it or trade it into something that's really cool. I.e., this 690 is something I will probably never get rid of, but at the same time, you never know. The right price for anything will make it go away. But a good example of appreciation that I've ran into is I bought a 1971 Datsun 240Z way back in like 2014 for like $4,500 out in Michigan from the second owner. Awesome car. It was beautiful. It was great. I put maybe $1,500 into it, just basically rebuilding the small things and getting it, running better. And it was awesome. I ended up selling that car in 2020 for almost $17,000. What? Like, talk about appreciation, talk about making my money back. How in the hell can that even happen? Now, I don't expect this to be that sort of example, but I think there are a few factors to then calculate the depreciation on my 690. So instead of getting too far in the weeds with this, what I actually did was I wrote all of these values down on a piece of paper, and I'll be putting them on the screen just to make it a little bit easier, because you don't want to sit here and watch me research how to do this. Also, caveat, this is kind of the Google version of how to do this, and my economics background of like 6 months in college. So if this is 100% incorrect, I apologize. If it's somewhat correct, I'm going to assume that this is going to be okay. But we're going to look at 3 different things. 1, the calculated depreciation based on an equation. Number 2, the NADA value, and I'll explain why I use NADA or JD Power over Kelley Blue Book. And then 3rd, the kind of just market value of what you'd find on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist that doesn't really exist anymore, of what other people are listing the bikes for. So let's jump into the actual equation of it. So to look at the total cost of my motorcycle out the door was $14,120. Now that's MSRP, that's dealer fees, that's taxes, that's everything, you know, the crate fees from the dealer. So everything that I paid out the door. You need a salvage value for your motorcycle or for the object. Salvage value wise, I'm gonna say $2,500. That's a really hard number to determine just because you could put $0, right? Salvage value could just be complete and total garbage. So we'll say $2,500, right? Like if I total this thing out, what would somebody pay me for it? I'm assuming that, right? So $2,500. Now it's been 3 years since this bike was considered new in 2021. So if you take that $14,120 minus the $2,500, then divide that by 3, you get a depreciation value of $3,873. Now, if you take that $3,873 minus the $14,120, you get a total value of $10,246. Now, this is a great real-life example, but when it comes to the market itself, no one cares what you paid out the door for a motorcycle. So I'm going to base it off of the MSRP. So the MSRP is $11,999. Take that same salvage value of $2,500 divided by 3, you get $3,166 in depreciation. So with that $3,166 minus the MSRP of $11,299, you get $8,832.66. So that would be a calculated version of the value of my current 690 SMC R. That is so sad when you think of the $12,000 that I've put into this motorcycle that really are going to do nothing for that value. Maybe a little bit, but at the same time, ouch. So then let's look to NADA or JD Power and Kelley Blue Book to value this motorcycle. Now, I've always used NADA or JD Power, however you want to look at it, for the value of a vehicle when it comes to purchasing, just because anytime that you want to actually get a loan on that, you want to get a bank involved, you want to get any financial party involved, they don't care about the Kelley Blue Book. They care about the NADA value, because that's I don't know why, but it's the way that they have calculated depreciation and their understanding of vehicles. So if you go to a bank and say, hey, I want to take out a loan for $10,000 for this bike because Kelley Blue Book says it's $10,000, they're probably going to look at you and go, well, what's the NADA value? The NADA value is like $7,200, dude. I'm only giving you $7,200. I know from experience. So Kelley Blue Book is like a cool reference. It's like a good market value. It's like a good, what's the heat of that vehicle for right now on the market. But when it comes to the banking system, they never look at Kelley Blue Book. So I don't either. NADA value for my bike with standard options is $9,275, where Kelley Blue Book says $11,330. Now you can see where NADA came in under my calculated depreciation value and Kelley Blue Book came over that. So that's where it kind of gets muddied in these waters, right? Because you've got these two ideas and two factors that can work, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the market, right? So when we look at the value of a 2021 KTM 690 SMC R on Facebook, you're seeing people range in kind of like that 10 to maybe like 11,000 mark if it's modified low miles, or you're seeing people all the way down to the $8,000 range. Now, when I've looked through, I don't know how many of these listings of people, it's interesting to see the ranges. There's some people who've got like 800 miles on these things and more modifications than me, and they're selling them for like 9 grand. And there's people with like, I don't know, 10,000 miles on them that are selling them for 11 grand. Like it's so subjective, right? It's a fluid market. It goes up and it goes down. So I don't really know what a good market value for this bike is. If I was going to list it today, I'd have to factor in maybe the thought of like, it's completely documented. You've seen every modification I've done to it. You've seen all the little pieces. You've seen all of the mistakes and all of the maintenance. So like that on top of the hundreds of receipts that I have, like there's a lot of value in that. So I'd probably be in that $13,000 range. Just a thought, maybe a little bit more, right? Because it's not like I can take the wheels off and like keep those because it needs wheels. But I digress. Which brings me to kind of wrapping this all up, right? Is the question of what would you pay for my KTM 690 SMC R? Now you've seen every mod. You know me, and I'm not a professional mechanic. You've seen the major issues that I've gone through and I'm currently going through. And you've seen basically how I've taken care of this motorcycle, which is something that a lot of people I feel like can't say about their bikes. Because if I look on Facebook Marketplace and I try to, reach out to somebody, message them, and ask them like, hey, what's the service history? 9 times out of 10, like, oh, it was good. Like I did this, like it was fun, like it was great. Like there's no other documentation aside from some paperwork that you can find on some of these items, right? So I think it's kind of cool and an interesting take on listing a used vehicle, especially from like a YouTuber, because you saw everything and you see everything. You know I track this bike. You know I've never dropped it. You know that I've had major issues with it and I've messed up plenty of times, but you've also seen all of the modifications and the pricing as it's gone through. So I don't know, but that leaves, again, you with that question of how much you would pay for my bike. Leave it in the comments down below, and I'd be really interested to see what you guys say. And I think I've got a plan for the future and maybe changing some things up in the motorcycle world, or at least my motorcycle world. Spoiler alert, I'll never get rid of this motorcycle. I will always keep it. It's too good, even if it keeps blowing up. But it's still a fun conversation. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you either learned something or laughed at me because I don't know what I'm talking about. And until next time, remember, keep riding. Now the air turns off, really?